Dziękuję bardzo, Pani President.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Expressing my sincere condolences to those affected by devastating floods in Valencia. And now in the beginning, I will start me on Bulgarian and I will continue in English. So, уважаеми председатели, уважаеми
Honorable chairs, honorable members of the ITRE committee and the Culture Committee. It is a privilege for me to stand here before you. Not long ago, I sat in a similar chamber in Sofia, serving the Bulgarian citizens as Member of Parliament. Thanks to this experience, I now have the deepest respect for this institution, which is the voice of European citizens. I wholeheartedly thank the Bulgarian government for my nomination. I have been extremely honored that President Ursula von der Leyen entrusted me to be the commissioner designate for such a strategic portfolio. I believe that my administrative and political experience at the highest level have equipped me with the ability to deal with my tasks as European Commissioner. The policy area for which I have been proposed is at the heart of the European competitiveness agenda. We need to put research and innovation at the center of all our policies in order to secure Europe's future. And this has been put into sharp relief by three important reports: the Letta report, the Draghi report, and the Hayter report. Against this background, I have the honor to share with you my vision for the portfolio Startups, Research and Innovation.
Outlined, R&I must be at the heart of a stronger and more competitive Europe. To unleash the full potential of R&I, we clearly need to invest more resources, more strategically, and in more coordinated way. Generative AI alone is estimated to add between 2 and 4 trillion euros to industries from pharmaceuticals to manufacturing. 1/3 of the CO2 reductions we need by 2050 will come from green technologies that are not yet on the market. Our R&I investments are lower than those of the US, China, and Japan. Uncoordinated research efforts across member states also weigh on our innovation performance. If confirmed, I will work tirelessly to shift this course. Our biggest strength is our people with their talent and creativity. We have 2 million bright minds that make Europe a global R&I powerhouse with the second highest research output in the world. This is the heart of our solid research and innovation base. Europe's successes rest upon the collaboration and partnership of all its parts. If confirmed, 5 key priorities will guide my action, for which I'm asking your trust and cooperation in the mandate ahead. They are united by my vision to construct a real European Research and Innovation Union that will enable Europe to become the most competitive region in the world. My first priority will be to strengthen the European research area with a new ERA Act. First, we must strive harder to reach our 3% GDP target for R&I. Today, we are only at 2.3%, and this is clearly not enough. Here, our ambition should be matched by pragmatism. I believe that commonly agreed national trajectories can help to achieve this goal, despite different starting points. Second, 27 excellent but fragmented research strategies do not make a good European one. 90% of European public R&I comes from national and regional funding, a firepower 9 times bigger than Horizon Europe. Lack of coordination creates inefficient funding systems, discourages mobility, and fails to exploit opportunities for cross-border cooperation. Third, we must make sure that talent remains in the EU and avoid further brain drain. The fifth freedom of movement of researchers, scientific knowledge, and technology needs to be ensured. Freedom of research will also be a core element of the Act. I fully support the Parliament's position on this matter. I also support investment in research and technology infrastructures. EU funding has created a world-class public network of supercomputers, and our Joint Research Center hosts unique infrastructure. These successes should inspire us in more critical sectors. Next to the AIR Act, I will significantly expand our European Research Council to fund more excellent research. My second priority for the Research and Innovation Union will be to make a leap forward for European innovation and European startups and scale-up companies. The key challenge of Europe is to mobilize more private investment into research and innovation. We must support our companies much better to commercialize and scale up their innovation here in Europe. As Mr. Draghi highlights, many of them often fail to successfully pass the growth stage. Every startup moving to third countries to seek capital represents a waste of European resources, a loss of European jobs, and missed opportunities for our communities. We must stop Europe's innovation drain. This starts by addressing the two most critical challenges for our innovators: access to capital and excessive red tape. This is why I will strongly expand and enhance the European Innovation Council, offering more opportunities, especially for disruptive and high-risk venture. The EIC is currently only able to fund a tiny minority of excellent projects, only 8%. It highlights the enormous demand of innovation funding. I will strengthen cooperation with the European Investment Bank and the recently launched Trusted Investors Network to foster private co-investment with the EIC fund. But funding is not enough. I will present a comprehensive startup and scale-up strategy and organize a European Startup and Scale-up Forum as quickly as possible. Specifically, our new European Innovation Act will address regulatory and administrative burden for our innovative companies. We need a 28 regime that will provide an attractive EU-wide status. I will also advance promising instruments like innovative procurement and regulatory sandboxes. My third priority will be to boost our research and innovation capacity in key technologies. Mr. Draghi pointed out that Europe cannot afford to remain trapped in middle technologies and industries. This is why I will ensure that R&I efforts are coordinated and concentrated in key technologies and areas with disruptive potential where we can build a global competitive advantage. From green technologies to biotech and productivity-enhancing digital tech. We witnessed the power of the EU collaborative efforts in the rapid development of COVID vaccines that saved so many lives. A European strategy to promote life sciences by 2040 is imperative. The strategy to be proposed in 2025 will allow life sciences and biotech to remain a major driver of Europe's competitiveness. If confirmed, I will also propose a strategy to increase the uptake of AI in science which carries a huge productivity potential. I also helped to set up a European AI Research Council to support these efforts. I will propose an Advanced Materials Act to enhance their development and production in Europe. Our Research and Innovation Union must be inclusive in methods and substance. This leads me to my fourth priority. As a minister, I built a track record in promoting women. You can count on me to work relentlessly to promote women in R&I. Women outnumber men at graduate levels, yet hold just 1 in 4 highest academic positions. This is not due to the lack of talent, but to structural barriers. I will present an action plan on women in R&I and startups, covering initiatives from gender research to safer workplace. I will strive to achieve the target of 50% women in all Horizon-related boards, expert groups, and evaluation committees. I will work to enhance the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, which is very successful in attracting female researchers. I want to strengthen university alliances to provide more attractive career perspective for our researchers, including women and young people. Within the first 100 days of my mandate, I will organize a youth dialogue, which I commit to hold annually. My last, but certainly not least priority, will be an ambitious budget for our next framework program. The past 40 years, our framework programs have been a unique European and global tool with clear impact. Not only they have supported unicorns and many Nobel Prizes winners, including this year's Nobel Prize winner of chemistry, Professor David Becker, they also improved our citizens' quality of life, created jobs, and growth. Horizon 2020 returned between 5 and 11 euros for each euro invested, and Horizon Europe's long-term impact is estimated between 800 and 975 billion. Not bad. In line with President von der Leyen's political guidelines, I will do my utmost to increase our research and innovation spending. This simply makes economic sense. We will need to continue to make sure that the whole of Europe benefits from the framework program. This is at the heart of the debate on widening, where progress has made recently, but much more needs to be achieved. And let me underline, from widening measures to be successful, stronger national efforts in R&I spending in all member states will be crucial. To make the framework program even more impactful, I will strive for radical simplification and clear priorities. From a global perspective, I will remain committed to promote international research and innovation cooperation through a balanced approach that fosters reciprocity, a level playing field, and protects our strategic autonomy and economic security. And I am committed to include and work with Ukrainian researchers and innovators as much as possible. If confirmed, I will also visit all our member states to seek their support, to hear the views of our universities, research organizations, startups, and SMEs. To achieve these goals, I will count on the experience in these committees and work as a team with Executive Vice Presidents Sejourné and Virkkunen, but also Commissioner Serafin and other commissioners. Honorable Member, I'm humbled to be the candidate to lead such a key portfolio for Europe's future. If confirmed, I will draw on my ministerial experience to oversee the work of 2 Directorates General, but also on my true European commitment. I promise to engage in strong and intensive cooperation with the European Parliament. Next to the regular structured dialogue with the ITRE committee, I am ready to meet the coordinators of political groups on a regular basis to discuss topics related to my portfolio. If confirmed, I plan extensive exchange with all of you, honorable members, on key aspects on R&I policy and on the next framework program. I look forward to answering your questions in detail and in full transparency. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for the opening statement. And now this is the time for political groups. So I want to once again mention the rules that for the first round, I will pass the floor to the coordinators of the political groups in the E3 committee in the order EPP, SND, PFE, ECR, Renew, Greens, the Left, and SNE. And please remember that we have 5-minute slots. So first, Christian Eller from EPP. The floor is yours.
Madam Commissioner Designate, first of all, good morning. Secondly, take a deep breath. That's not a tribunal, it's a hearing. But I think we strictly come to the beef. I mean, the high-level group, chaired by Professor Heiter, recently published its report. The report highlighted the importance of an increased budget as well as a more decentralized and flexible governance structure. This is the only way, from our point of view, to ensure that the Europeans will get a program delivered that also works for the scientists and innovators. My question will be, how will you stand up to ensure the independence of the program? Secondly, including the more expert-driven governments, and, as you had been mentioning yourself, a budget which had been described as a minimum of 200 billion euros for the next framework program.
Thank you, Mr. Eller. Thank you so much for encouraging words. We have really 3 very important reports, and the last was Mr. Hertor report, and I did have a chance to speak with Mr. Hertor for short, and I hope if I'm approved, of course, today to have much more intensive dialogue with all the experts that propose this very, very important report for preparation of the next framework program. Because I have only 2 minutes, I will start with commitment to fight for an independent and increased framework program and support more expert-driven governance. I see a clear benefits on increased budget of R&I, and I will count on your support to convince the member states, and this is my goal, to work with them, to visit all of them, to meet finance minister and convince them that the best investment that they can do is in education and in R&I. The evaluation of the Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe clearly shows this. It's really important for the growth and for European competitiveness. So I'm in favor in decentralization in Pillar 2 and in Pillar 3. Take the good example that we have of Pillar 1 of European Research Council, which is excellent council. I met with them and I'm really impressed of what they're doing. Take this good example and implement this in Pillar 2 and Pillar 3.
Christian.
Would be the Commission wants to make a consideration of the do no significant harm principle as part of the evaluation of Horizon proposals. However, there is no legal base for this in the Horizon regulation, the MFF package, or the financial regulation. It's a political legacy from the Timmermans agenda not a legally sound approach. Will you commit to assessing the legal base of this approach, to sharing the assessment with the Parliament, and, if it's necessary, to change the approach where it's appropriate?
Thank you, Mr. Eller. As you mentioned in your question, the Commission already took some measures, and they introduced amendments in the strategic plan for 2025-2027, which foresees that future applicants will not do this self-assessment of the do no significant harm principle, but this will be done by the Commission, and the goal is to decrease the unnecessary administrative burden. But I am committed to assess the current approach and the new approach, and to share the assessment with the European Parliament. And of course, if change needed, to discuss with all of you possible changes if these measures that are taken are not enough to decrease the unnecessary administrative burden to our applicants.
Thank you. Then Nika from S&D.
Doamna comisar,
Madam Commissioner Designate, you have a great challenge ahead of you, namely to correct what did not work well in Horizon Europe. We have a competitiveness issue in Europe, and the Draghi report clearly states that one of the main reasons is that insufficient resources are allocated to research and innovation in Europe. And secondly, another problem is related to where the money is spent. Also, European citizens are dissatisfied because they do not see the benefits of the research and development programs and their implementation in their everyday lives. You have a problem, and we all have a problem with the EIC. Before it turns into a commercial project, we have many problems. Many of these projects are not commercially ready. They are not commercially viable, and this is a challenge for your mandate. The third problem I would like to raise, Madam Commissioner Designate, is how the assessment is carried out. There are many situations where it matters more who is the applicant, who writes the project, than the content of the project itself. And this is a problem mainly in the countries that are in an early stage of research and development, such as Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, and other countries. And they are losing a competitive advantage because the problem is the country where they come from. How do you comment on that, Madam Commissioner Designate?
Thank you, Mr. Nika, for your questions. In 2 minutes, I will repeat myself that we have a momentum with these three very important reports, Draghi and Hator, the last one, and before that letter. So we should really work relentlessly to achieve increased budget for research and innovation, but not only through the European funds. I would say this is clearly not enough. In my introduction, I mentioned that actually Horizon is only 1/10 of the public resources. So we should work with member states to motivate them to achieve the goals of 3% target that we all commit 22 years ago. It was 22 years ago that we all commit to reach the 3% GDP target for R&I. And the private sector investments are really crucial. Actually, Europe is not doing bad in public funding compared with United States and China, even a bit better, but we are really lagging behind in private sector investment. I am agreed that we should work to have more focused framework program, more targeted priorities. I see we said 6 clusters in PR2, but in reality, it's more than 15 priorities. And in my opinion, if we have 15 priorities, it means that we have 0 priorities. So we should be more focused on the next framework program. And I commit to work with you and to manage to plan a much more focused framework program with increased funding. On your last question, I hear your worries. I heard these worries not only from you, but from some of the stakeholders, coming not only from the widening member states, that the program is too complicated with an unnecessary administrative burden. So, because my time is running, I'm in favor to implement the blind evaluation. I know that one pilot project already was implemented. The DG assess now the implementation of this pilot project, but I'm in favor to continue to this blind evaluation process because we should increase the trust in the program.
This is great news. After many years, DG RD will have a pilot project for this evaluation. Madam Commissioner Designate, there are 31 documents that an applicant for a research project has to produce. Don't you think that 31 documents is too much? And I come back to what I was saying earlier. The first 10 recipients who received money from Horizon Europe in the European Union earned more money than Romania. Isn't it a bit strange that 10 entities receive more money than a member state? And this leads to lack of credibility related to how resources are allocated and how projects are evaluated. How do you comment on that?
As I said in my introduction, there is some progress in the widening measures, but still a lot have to be achieved. The data are positive since the FP7 widening countries have tripled their share in the program. If this trend will be preserved in Horizon Europe, 15% of the grants will reach in the end of the program from the widening country, compared to 9 under Horizon 2020. Yes, I agree with you. It's absolutely unnecessary for the applicants to provide 31 documents and assessment and self-evaluation, etc., etc. So I plan to work for strong simplification in this program. I don't want to focus and to wait 3 years for the next framework program. We are in the middle of implementation of this one. So we plan to work on so-called two-phase application. The first phase to be only focused on the project, the core of the project. And if the project is approved, the applicants to be asked to provide the other assessment and documents. And this will spare a lot of time and money for our beneficiaries.
Thank you. Paolo Borgia from PFE.
Thank you and welcome. Well, the resources assigned to SMEs within Horizon Europe are around 20% of your overall budget. European Innovation Council has achieved its target of allocating 70%, but the participation of the category remains lower than in Horizon 2020. In your written answers, you address the issue of creating a favorable environment for SMEs. So, could you tell us more about your vision on this framework and which further measures you intend to adopt to break down administrative barriers, ensuring a more meaningful participation in Horizon Europe and other programs for SMEs, given the fact that SMEs represent around 98% of European enterprises. In this context, I would also like to know whether and how you intend to strengthen the PRIMA partnership in order to improve scientific cooperation between EU and the Mediterranean area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Borgia. to give me a chance to develop a bit more my answer to Mr. Nick about simplification. As you rightly said, actually, 99% of the EU economy is SMEs, and they give 2/3 of the jobs in Europe. And the data that you quote as well, 20% of the funding to SMEs is clearly not enough in Horizon if they represent 99% of European economy. In EIC, yeah, it's really focused on SMEs. 75% of the funds go to the SMEs. But speaking with SMEs, with the stakeholders, actually their number one priority is simplification. 54% of the SMEs, from SMEs being startups or others, they want from us to simplify, to reduce the red tape. 21 mentioned funding, so it should start with simplification. Just funding, increasing funding, it will not work if we don't simplify. So, European Innovation Act will be the main legislative vehicle for simplification, which will include this first legislative qualification of what is startup, which we miss, is very important, regulatory sandboxes, procurements, innovative procurements, and EU-wide status for our startups to be able to work in whole Europe. And to shorten the time of award funding. Today, it's 238 dates in EIC. It's clearly too much. And this is only for closing date to signing contract. Actually, it takes more than a month and a half from the applicants to prepare their application. So in general, this means 1 year only to sign a contract. So I hope that there will be many questions on simplification, so I'll stop here and develop my ideas later during the hearing.
Thank you very much. Second question, very brief and straight. In your opening statement, you stated that European Parliament is the voice of European people, and every one of us is very happy with it. But I would like to ask you, what is your position on the so-called cordon sanitaire, and how you assess the decision to support it by your political group? Well, yesterday, some of your future colleagues gave us some paste and copy feedback, so I would appreciate your sincere assessment on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borchia. I'm, of course, aware of the so-called cordon sanitaire. I'm ready to work with every member state, every member of European Parliament who is in favor and support the European values to make Europe stronger, to make Europe more competitive, and in my portfolio, for increased budget, focus program, focus priorities, simplification, and this is my answer to this question. And of course, support our security as well, because we are not going to be competitive without being secure. So in European, I really believe, and this is my firm belief, it's not the talking points, that European Union security is very much connected with what happened in Ukraine. And to be more precise, to help Ukraine to win this war and to support them as long as necessary. So I work with all of the members in the Parliament who support these values. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena Donatan.
Commissioner designated, I will speak in Italian. Un tema che
I would also like to raise an important issue for us, which is the energy transition, and particularly nuclear. There's an increased demand for safe, clean energy for research, particularly on small reactors and fusion. And these are going to play a key role, particularly to guarantee energy autonomy that you refers to as well. And so we need to also help to reduce carbon emissions. So what do you plan to do to strengthen research and innovation in nuclear? Of course, this is always a very sensitive area, particularly evaluations of new technologies and security. And a second question, how do you plan to ensure closer cooperation between member states? You refer to a European ecosystem. I think when it comes to nuclear, we could start work on this immediately.
Grazie mille. Grazie mille. We discussed, we met during my preparation, and quite a lot of actually members of the parliament asked me about my position of development of nuclear energy. I know it's a very controversial topic, but in research and innovation, I am going to speak about research and innovation. Nuclear research is really important to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. My plan is to propose you and the Council to extend the European Euratom research and training program for the next years, 2026-2027. And it's member state choice, the energy mix. And I'm going to stick to the long-standing European Commission position to be technology neutral, but it doesn't mean that we are not going to support research in nuclear. It's important for nuclear safety. It's important, as I said, and it's mentioned in the Draghi report as well, actually, to achieve our climate neutrality goals by 2050. So for SMRs, I continue to support the already established small modular reactor alliance, and through the research innovation program and Euratom to support research in safety of small modular reactors, or SMRs, as is well known.
Grazie. La risposta è...
Thank you. Well, I like your response because you gave clear indications. The second, a bit more in depth, but this will be on SMEs, which again you referred to in your previous words. I just wanted to emphasize that, as you said, technological neutrality has to be the common thread. So what can we do to help private investment? You said this in your previous speech. Private investment need clarity, as you said. They need clear direction, and they need reassurance, tranquility about the long term. And I think the Euratom timetable is also worth emphasizing here. And we also need to emphasize the skills, competencies that we have. We have to ensure that we keep up the level of research that we have, and ensure that, and this is my key question, what type of intervention can be made to improve research, particularly when it comes to nuclear and SMEs?
The Euratom Research and Training Program, it's a really excellent program that we have, and it is key program for preserving our skills in nuclear energy. So I will focus to develop the program, and I rely on your support, as I already mentioned. The key action includes support the European SMRs Industrial Alliance, as I already mentioned, funding R&I projects for the safety of SMRs, education and training, including a nuclear skills initiative, and this initiative will be launched in the beginning of 2025. And I'm optimistic that we can attract and support startups in this sector. We have already positive examples of some of companies like Nucleo. It's a nuclear fission unicorn that recently relocated from UK to EU, and it's particularly mentioned that it's because of possibilities of European funds.
Thank you. Mr. Morten Løkkegaard, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to you, Commissioner Designate. I will follow up on what my colleagues already started the discussion about SMEs and startups. I guess I will not be the only one in this room. This will not be the first time, but since I have the chance now to talk about this, the bureaucratic hurdles that many startups are facing. In your written answers, you outline strategies for reducing administrative burdens, such as simplifying funding applications, streamlining reporting, creating unified regulatory environment, and so on and so forth, through the 28th regime. And this 28th regime, I think, is key here. So my first question to you would be, what immediate actions will you take to start work on the 28 regimes? Because I think it's turning into a ghost somewhat. We need to be more specific about it. So what will you do immediately when starting on this?
Thank you, Mr. Løkkegaard. What immediately I plan to do is to organize as soon as possible, in the beginning, maybe January, February, this startup and scale-up forum. We want to hear the stakeholders actually what they need. I think we should start simplification from the most urgent demand of our stakeholders. As I already mentioned, actually the first priority for them is double more than funding, it's simplification. I will work very closely with my colleague, Commissioner of Justice, to propose in 2025 the framework of this 28 regime, which is very, very needed and very expected from our stakeholders, from the SMEs and startups and scale-ups. On simplification, I start to develop my question, but 2 minutes is really quite a few time. So my plan is to have a client-centristic policy. I really like what was mentioned in Hato report. Trust first, evaluate later. And I already mentioned this two-stage, so to say, two-phase application form. And I plan to introduce the pilot project of this two-phase application in 2025. This will spare cut at least half the time that is needed from the SMEs. Now it's more than 35 days, and this is for the simple project with not many applicants. 35 working days for them to prepare the application, which is too much, really too much. We have to use AI to help SMEs to identify the funding opportunities. We have quite a lot of funds that finance R&I, and sometimes it's difficult for them to find the right funding instrument for their project.
Well, thank you very much for that answer. And to follow up immediately on that one, I think the two of us could agree that the startups have the best understanding of their own obstacles they face. So it's important to listen to them. You already mentioned that you will start this forum in February, March. Yet we often hear complaints from the very same startups that they, of course, people listen to them, but when it comes to the next step, it sort of stops. You can't find a politician not supporting startups, but the next step is sort of a problem. How would you change this and actively include the startups so we can be sure that this next step will be fulfilled?
A really good question. Unfortunately, it's happened. Yeah, they have right sometimes. I don't plan this to happen. I already actually start meeting with their communities. They have quite well-established organizations in Europe. And the plan for this forum is exactly this. I mean, to meet, I don't want to make some new body. I mean, we are very good in creating different structures, but actually my goal is to have this forum and more informal forum, really to meet on a regular basis, to discuss with the stakeholders, and to discuss in advance also what we propose. Because sometimes I really don't want to start with simplification and in the end to have even more complicated legislation, which unfortunately happens sometimes. So my plan is to have this consultation process very smooth through whole legislative work, from the idea to the first proposal to the draft, this coordination with the stakeholders.
Thank you. And Mr. Villeninisto, the floor is yours.
Madam Zaharieva, you already answered that you are going to work for an independent Horizon Europe framework program, and in that context I would also like to expand on it a bit more. Obviously we will need a lot more research in Europe to be competitive in the future, but more broadly as well in the long term to invest in excellence as well, to make sure that it's high quality research that we have in Europe and we evolve as societies as a whole and progress. How do you make sure that we have guarantees to exclude any rechanneling of R&I money for short-term needs in the EU budget? Because, you know, a robust and independent framework program needs to be robust and independent also during its mandate. Secondly, we will also need a lot of basic research. We can't have short-term industrial needs answered by only moving money away from basic research to short-term innovation, because innovation is based on high quality of basic research in the long term. So how do you make sure that we have also a stronger focus to reinforce basic research and to strengthen also social sciences and humanities? And thirdly, R&I spending is obviously something where we need to make sure that the member states are doing also more. How do you make sure that the leverage effect of the EU budget of R&I increases the national spending, we overcome the 3% of GDP target, and even work to introduce a new target of 4% by 2030?
Thank you, Mr. Ninistio. Very important questions you raised. We start from the end. 3% target is agreed 22 years ago, and I think we should use the mechanism that we have, like a European semester, to motivate the reforms and to reach this 3% target as soon as possible. It's really 22 years ago. And the problem is, as I already mentioned, the private investments, as you also mentioned this in your question. How to motivate the private investment? I think we should use better the European funds, like, for example, create mechanism which decrease the risk, like cover first risk mechanisms, like guarantees, etc., etc. So I have quite a lot of ideas. Of course, if I'm improved, I'm ready to share more details with you and work very close with the European Parliament on the budget. We have ring-fenced budget now. You're right. But at the end, we almost always not able to prevent that the budget is cut in the midterm revision, like it happens actually with 2.1 billion, as far as I remember. And when the Commission proposed the annual budget, for example, this year happened, the Council decided to cut the proposal of the Commission by 1 billion. So unfortunately, ring-fenced don't protect the money for research and innovation. And my plan is, and I really rely a lot on you, to work with the member state, as I already mentioned. Otherwise, having ring-fence don't mean protected. To work with the member states and to show the results of Horizon, which are not well known, unfortunately, among the citizens, even among maybe the finance minister, to show them, to convince them that it's really not useful, it's not good for European competitiveness to use Horizon Europe or our framework programs as a saving account for arising new emerging priorities.
more concretely, what's happening now in Valencia and many other places in Europe has a relation to climate change, unfortunately, as well. People are losing lives and also possibilities to continue with European, investments in agriculture and so on. We need to also adapt to climate change, and we need to have solutions on that. Research and innovation plays a key role also in climate solutions. And we have the target of 35% spending today for climate in the framework program. And we would like to hear from you as Greens that you commit to continue this commitment to achieve and even increase it beyond 35% of spending into climate solutions in order to make sure that our societies are also resilient to the unfortunate changes that are anyway happening around us, also find ways to mitigate climate change. So how do you see it? Are you committed to make sure that we have effective high quality spending on climate and that we achieve the 35% and also have it more as a societal resilience spending?
Yes, Mr. Ninisto, I commit to the 35% target, and I spoke with the DG. We are really close to reach the target. I think we reached the 35% target. Unfortunately, we are 8.7% on biodiversity at that stage, but this is a good development, and I think we will be able to achieve the 10% target on biodiversity by the end of the program. As you rightly mentioned, it's really important for our competitiveness, but also for our people's life. And still half of the global GDP depends on nature or environment. So definitely we should invest in research and innovation to reach our climate goals. It's a must. It's not a matter of choice. I don't want to choose between competitiveness and environment. They should go hand by hand. We are not able to be competitive without preserving our environment. And it's the opposite. We are not going to reach our goals, climate goals, without being competitive.
Thank you. Mr. Per Clausen.
Tack för det.
Thank you very much. More than 42,000 Palestinians have died since the attacks on Gaza. At the moment, Israel is breaking all the rules, but we still have Israeli arms companies participating in Horizon Europe. This is, in fact, the largest company in the program, especially when it comes to aviation. Now, this is the case because the funding has to be maintained, and we're also offering funding for operations that are for defense purposes. We see that the programs that Horizon Europe has funded are also being used for military operations in Palestine and in Gaza. So how exactly can we ensure that these funds are not sent to programs and universities in Israel that eventually lead to military activities, so that we can ensure that human rights and international law is not violated? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. Horizon Europe will continue to fund, I will be very straightforward, Israeli researchers, but will closely monitor that the ethical rules and international law are respected, as actually we do with all of our applicants. And Israeli research companies and entities and organizations must comply with the EU and international law. No project funded by Horizon Europe with Israeli participants foresees defense-relevant funding. So there is no such kind of case. The DG evaluate and check all the projects that we have with Israeli researchers. So we have very strict monitoring system which implement on the Horizon. It's compliance with the ethical principles, exclusive focus on civilian applications, as you all know. So no exception are allowed to such approach. And non-compliance will lead to recovery of EU funding or termination of the participation. But as I already said, there is no project with participation of Israeli research organization or universities or companies which finance defense-relevant research. So I think, to conclude my answer, I'm not supportive to idea to close the program based on nationality. I don't support. This will be discrimination.
Jeg er meget glad for at høre, at du er enig med mig i, at det er afgørende betydning.
Thank you. I'm happy to learn that you agree with me. Now, in terms of the projects that we fund, it's very important that they do not contravene human rights and respect thereof. The military activities by Israel are based on projects funded by Horizon Europe. When it comes to drones operations, for example. However, one of the consequences of the crisis in Gaza is that universities in Gaza have been severely affected, much more than before. Perhaps Horizon can aid research in universities in Gaza.
Thank you for this question. Yeah, Horizon Europe and the DG tries to reach the Palestinian researchers, but the truth is, in practice, it's difficult. We have two projects now with engagement of Palestinian researchers, and I can commit that we continue to do our best with this really difficult situation to find the ways to support Palestinian researchers.
Thank you. And now Mr. Peter Volgin.
Уважаема госпожо Захариева,
Madam Zaharieva, the common understanding of Europe, including what was included in the Draghi report on competitiveness, is that Europe is severely lagging behind the US and China in the field of high technologies. It is widely believed that due to the Ukraine war, Europe will be forced to spend an enormous amount of money for security. There is a proposal to create an agency in Europe similar to the DARPA agency in the EU, in the United States, to fund groundbreaking technologies. Do you think that the research policy should be focused mostly on defense research, and can a militarized Europe create sufficient funding for research? And will you create a favorable environment for research? Your portfolio does not mean high defense budgets.
Благодаря, господин Волгин, за въпроса.
Thank you, Mr. Volgin, for your question. It is not Europe and not Ukraine that started the war. It was Russia that started it. So, yes, we do have a new geopolitical environment, and the European Union should work to improve its own security. Research and innovations in the civilian field does not preclude supporting military research. The two are not in contradiction. Yes, and I support, this is certainly not in my portfolio, but if I am confirmed, I am in favor of Europe increasing funding for research and innovation in defense. You mentioned DARPA. I personally would like to see the executive agencies in the European Innovation Council should have such an approach to their work. Let me give you an example. DARPA, for instance, is the biggest funding organization in the US which provides funding for cancer research. In other words, innovation and research in defense often have a high added value for the population. Thank you. My follow-up question. Let me remind you that some time ago, the Italian La Stampa newspaper said that the Draghi report can be summed up with the statement that military research should be the engine of everything. It is now being said that the military spending should be increased from 2 to 3% of GDP. Draghi wishes the Council to be similar to the one in the US. We expect a militarization of Europe, and the concept of the EIC should be subordinated to the issues of security. Will you be able to prevent research and innovations into an area in which war would defeat peace? Or should we sacrifice everything in favor of supporting Ukraine, no matter what the cost? Well, my hope is that peace will defeat war. I believe strongly that our security depends on Ukraine winning the war. And yes, I think that the resources we use to help Ukraine win is not lost money. It is an investment in our own security. Ukraine is fighting for our own security. Concerning the Draghi report, that's not the way I read it. Yes, he does say that we need to strengthen research and innovation and security, and I support this. But 2 or 3 chapters in the report, if I'm not mistaken, are devoted to research and innovations and the ways in which this strategically important sector can be strengthened.
Thank you. We have just finished the first round. We are about 15 minutes over the time, so let's switch to the second round and immediately to the E3 members. So first, Eva Majdal.
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak in my mother tongue.
Madam Commissioner Designate, welcome to our committee. In the ITRE committee, we know very well statistics and figures, and they show that Europe is a research powerhouse. 1/3 of publications in the world come from the EU. At the same time, EU has a disproportionately high number of Nobel Prize winners. We have 150 patents last year submitted to the European Patent Office. However, as a continent, we are lagging behind in the field of competitiveness compared to countries like the US and China. I have always believed that one of our main goals is to catch up, and this can be done by innovations and modernizing the European economy. We now have 95 billion for research. The bulk of this funding is for Horizon, more than 53 billion. So my question is, do you have an idea of how to redirect funding so that European science can lead to innovation, to support the modernization of economy and at the same time promote economic growth? Thank you, Mrs. Meidel. I will try to be brief, even though I will not be able to fit everything in 2 minutes. You are right. The big difference between us and the United States and also Japan and other countries are in the field of private investment in research and innovation. Only 40% of European companies invest in research and innovation. In the US, it's 56%. It's even higher in Japan and South Korea. Yes, I agree. This is Pillar 2. I think I mentioned this. This is where the biggest resource in Horizon is in Pillar 2. And it is intended to promote investment in research and innovation and cooperation between universities and private companies. What do we need to do? We need to be much more focused. We need to have clear priorities. What I notice in the program, particularly in Pillar 2, is that there is an absence of focus. An attempt has been made in Horizon 2 to reduce the number of partnerships from 140 currently to 60. 49 have been launched, if I'm not mistaken. At the same time, what we notice is a complicated management and an insufficiently efficient system of measuring the impact of private investment. That is the private contribution to this pillar. In other words, we need a better focus, a better measuring tools, and tools to encourage the private sector to invest in research and innovation.
I would also be speaking in Bulgarian. Здравейте, госпожо Захариева.
Good morning, Madam Zaharieva, and welcome to today's hearing. I have a question on startups. In the last mandate, the European Parliament adopted a report showing the need for a working European ecosystem favorable to startups. The main conclusion was that the main hurdles was the red tape. Now, my question is how the European Commission will define the bringing down of the red tape, because this is the only way to guarantee the development of the startups. And second, what are the legislative initiatives so that the startups remain in Europe? And last but not least, the grants and the funding. What are the additional funding mechanisms so that we can encourage the private investments in the sector of research and innovation? I do agree with what you said, that only public investments will not do. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Pankova. Now, I would like to thank Parliament for this report, and I want to thank you personally because as far as I know, you're the rapporteur. This report is very useful and comes in handy for the work of the Commission, so thank you very much for this valuable and top-notch report. I have said already that one of the main tasks we'll be faced with is to understand the needs of the sector. As you said, there are different ideas of definitions of what is actually a start-up or innovative companies. We need a definition for the 28th regime to work properly. So we have a multitude of ideas, and it lies with the future to see what will be our common understanding. We have some data, we analyze these data, and everything hinges on the number of companies which will be affected. When we are ready, we'll share our conclusions with you. Now, European research and innovation will give a single market to all the European companies to work in a better environment. We must be flexible. We must think of more legislative initiatives providing a favorable environment for the entities. You talked also about the tenders, the public procurement. We're lagging behind the USA, and this is a very valuable and additional instrument for financing innovations, but I leave it at that because I overstepped my time.
Me voy a ayudar a mi país porque esto es una falsa.
Thank you.
Mrs. Esther Lakos.
Designate Zaharieva. Can I? Okay. Commissioner Designate Zaharieva. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Designate Zaharieva, you are certainly aware of the interinstitutional fight related to the association agreements to Horizon Europe. I'm referring to Category D countries and the novel solution adopted via the Chapeau Agreement and the establishment of joint committees that they are entitled to scrutinize and also to conclude the association agreements to different EU programs. And they bypass basically the European Parliament consent. And the European Parliament disagrees with this novel structure that is running across the MFF because it does not allow the Parliament to exercise its powers and its prerogatives based on the Treaty of the Functioning of the EU. I'm referring to Article 208 in Para 6. And in addition, it also neglects the interinstitutional balance. So this approach, in our view, should be revisited. So my question to you would be, what are the guarantees that you give to the European Parliament that in the future you will refrain from tabling these kind of general agreements and you will ensure that the Parliament is fully involved in the decision-making process? And if we talk about the association, please allow me an additional question, which is dear to my heart. It's related to the Western Balkan countries. What are your plans to support the integration of these countries to the European research area? And I would be happy if it was not only widening participation measures. Thank you very much in advance.
Thank you, Madam Lakos. I'll start with your first question. I am aware, I have spoke with many of you, and many of you have raised this concern. What can I say at this stage? I'm really open to find ways with European Parliament to give them a greater, to give you, I mean, a greater say on future association agreements. Transparency vis-a-vis the Parliament is a really high priority for me. And I'm committed to timely share on the equal base as co-legislators all relevant information during the negotiations and implementation phases to these agreements. And I'm stand ready to offer additional information upon request and to really to work with you to find a solution of this long-standing dispute between the Parliament, Commission and the Council. About the Western Balkans, it's also a topic dear to my heart. During the presidency of the first presidency of the Council of Bulgaria, we put very high. I think it was a priority of Bulgaria. It was a European perspective of the Western Balkans. So I'm very happy that they are fully integrated into European research area. They were included, all the Western Balkans countries and partners in this year's ERA monitoring report. So we have to work with them very closely. They'll be a member of the European Union someday. So it's a win-win, and I'm ready to discuss with you other ideas and proposals if you have in the direction.
Mrs. Julie Rechagneau.
Je vais m'exprimer en français.
I'll be speaking French. Good morning, Madam Commissioner Designate. On the 21st of March 2024, during the nuclear summit, a number of people from the industry adopted a joint statement that asked for nuclear to be taken better account of in environmental policies and in government and international financing. The EU was particularly targeted during this because in recent years, the EU has tried to focus on renewable energy projects rather than nuclear. In 2021, for example, the EIB said there was a 10 billion investment in renewables, whereas only 1 billion was invested in nuclear projects. Thomas Strauss, the EIB chair, said that they would be focusing on renewables until 2030. As you said, nuclear is a safe and carbonless energy and will be important to contribute to EU climate goals. So in your role, do you plan to encourage the EIB to focus on nuclear and investment in nuclear?
Thank you for this question. Yes, I already mentioned that nuclear is important for reaching our goals, climate goals to 2050. I work with EIB. I already spoke with the president of EIB, discussing not nuclear in particular, but discussing how we can cooperate better to increase the funding in innovations and to support our startups and SMEs in our joint endeavor to boost, to pull more private investment. So I will continue discussion with EIB. I think that we have to work very close with EIB, I mean EIC and EIB instruments that we have. We'll sum up that innovation, it's really, and research is really important to reduce our emissions. So we have to continue this focus that we have in Horizon. And actually, I think 48% of the projects under Pillar 2, which is collaborative pillar, it's linked with climate projects, and majority of them are linked with energy.
Thank you. Mr. Carlo Ciccioli.
paesi dell'Unione Europea si trovano ad...
The EU is facing the trap of talent development, given that we see the exit of young people, particularly people outside of the European Union. We need structural problems. Even more paradoxically, these countries are training talent and invest in their talent, and then they lose their young people. We know that the single market is a strong driver of territorial exchange, and that freedom of movement leads to lots of benefits. However, the narrative often doesn't reflect the reality of less structured regions, where there's a serious threat of brain drain, which threatens local development and impoverishes that territory. Initiatives such as the European Research Area focus on researchers and young talents. But we don't talk about the right to remain for young people who wish to contribute to the development of their own local communities. So what specific concrete actions do you tend to adopt when it comes to the ERA in order to ensure proper balance between support for mobility and also creating an attractive environment which will attract and retain talent and keep them in their place of origin? Thank you very much.
Thank you, grazie mille for this question. It's very dear to my heart. I'm coming from Bulgaria, in I mean all the so-called Central Eastern European member states. One of the biggest challenges that we face is a brain drain. So it's a topic very dear to my heart. So yes, I'm committed to work, and I mentioned in my introduction that the biggest asset that we have is the talent. We can double, triple the money, we can simplify our procedure, but I think the most important goal that we should have is to retain the talents in Europe and to attract new ones. Not only to retain ours, to remain here and to attract new ones. Because without the talent, there will be no research and innovation. And of course, ERA Act, I didn't have chance to speak that much about the ERA Act, one of the most important acts, I think, in my portfolio. One of the focus in ERA will be also this retaining talents. How? I think like it's naive to think that we will be able to have equal payment in all the member states, because the development of GDP is different, but at least what we can have is a minimum standards for young researchers and innovators, for women innovators and researchers. And I'm ready to work with the region as well, with the University Alliances, which is very powerful tool, an instrument that we created to listen to the ideas, but what is really urgent is to create and to propose a minimum standards, better salaries, better conditions, good contracts for our researchers, but last but not least, it's really important, the research infrastructure. So that's why one of the priorities for my mandate will be to propose research and technology in strategy to develop our infrastructure.
Mr. Ivers Japs.
Much, Commissioner Designate, for your answers, but I have a little bit more specific question. Thank you for your commitment to widening. We fully support that in the Renew Group, and also the issue of the blind evaluation, which was mentioned at the very beginning. I think this is really an important step to improve the governance of the framework program. But you mentioned already several times that it's really necessary to induce the domestic spending, the public spending in the member states. What are the ways you propose to do that? Because we have been speaking about this issue for a very long time, and we say that basically, especially taking into account the recent challenges, meaning the COVID pandemics, and also, of course, the Russian full-scale aggression in Ukraine, the research spending in some member states has gone down and not up. So what are your proposals? How would you as a commissioner work with the member states to make this happen? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Urbas. I think, as you rightly mentioned, the national budgets faces quite a lot of challenges. You mentioned COVID, the war, completely right, the increased prices of electricity and the measures that all the member states took to support the industries and the households to survive. Even to survive, it was a matter of survival of some of them to these difficult periods when Russia was blackmailing us with gas and other sources that we are really very naive to think that if they rely on us, they are not going to start this war if we are buying the products from them. How? Really by dialogue. I don't have other tools. The tool that I already mentioned is European semester, and I'm committed to work on European semester and to have a stronger focus in European semester on research, innovation spending, but also reforms, which are really important, because without reforms, the funding is not enough. This is my motto: funding, it's not enough itself. We should implement the reforms as well. So through dialogue, speaking with finance minister, that's why I'm mentioning them, not only with research and innovation minister or minister of science, it depends on the structure of the member states, because they are all supportive, of course, but we should have a really very intensive dialogue with the finance minister, with the minister of ministers for economy, to show them the results, to show them the added value. And I think we have a really good momentum with the Draghi report, which is very economy-oriented report. I mean, we have a really momentum, and we should use this momentum.
Thank you. Mrs. Lina Galvez.
To the European Parliament, as we have discussed, you will have a very key portfolio for achieving European competitiveness, but also for doing it in a just and inclusive way. So we are glad to hear about your commitment to a strong budget for research and innovation, to international cooperation, to territorial cohesion, also for achieving climate goals, and also for regulating the use of artificial intelligence on science, which is very much linked to open science and data, and is showing already great possibility, but also worries among the scientific community. And of course, I'm glad to see your clear commitment to gender equality on research and innovation. So, will gender equality plans continue to be an eligibility criterion in the next 10th framework program? Thank you.
Yes, I'll be very much focused on gender equality. The data are really not positive. As I already mentioned, women outnumber the men at graduate levels, but when it comes to highest possible academic position, we are really not doing well. Hit even worse in innovation. Only 1% of the projects that the EIC granted where the companies were managed, the CEOs were women. So can you imagine, it's a huge, it's nothing. So will continue to implement the plan. This gender balance plan to be part of the evaluation process of the projects, to work to reach the target. Horizon is unique in that perspective, actually. I think it's one of the few programs that have a clear target, like 50% participation of women in all related Horizon boards, expert groups, and evaluation committees. So yeah, I'm very much committed to work with you, with the member states. It's really important, with universities and research organizations, and how to increase women in research and innovation. It has link also with what I was mentioning, answering the previous questions about how to retain the talent. I mean, these minimum standards It's really very important to make this profession attractive for women, because the data shows that they start work and they leave, very often they leave their work as researchers and innovators.
Thank you. Mrs. Angelika Niebler.
Verehrte Frau designierte
Commissioner Delegate, helping startups and scale-ups and SMEs, as you have mentioned, is very important for the future of Europe. And the future research program and the council as well will play leading roles here in the future. You talked about the European Innovation Council's reform, and you've mentioned quite often that private investments, especially for startups and scale-ups, is of the utmost importance. You've often mentioned Draghi's report, and I'm delighted. With this report, he's also warned that the middle technology trap could be something we might be stuck in Europe, which will mean that we do not have enough innovation, and therefore we would, as Europeans, be lagging behind in terms of competitiveness globally. Now, my first question, what do you want to do to help startups, SMEs and scale-ups in the future research program to ensure that they receive support? And also specifically, have you any ideas as to how the reform of the European Innovation Council should be shaped? And thirdly, private investment. How do you hope to mobilize and galvanize support for this and funding? Thank you very much.
Danke sehr, liebe Frau Niebler. Try to be very focused. You raised a really important question. Creation of strategic of task force for startup and scale up. I am very focused to do this as fast as possible to be able to deliver really very fast on strategy. Propose a very comprehensive strategy, but with strategy is not enough. It's important to implement the strategy. European Innovation Act is also really important. The measures that I already have chance to introduce, answering the previous questions, shorten the time to award funding. It's really important. Today is 238 days. 238 days is in EIC. Yes, I'm in favor in implementing ARPA style in EIC, and more specifically in the first part, which is really useful. That means that to strengthen the competencies of managers. They are very skilled people. They have to have bigger flexibility and autonomy to decide where to finance, how to finance, and also to decide to stop financing, which is very important, I think, with the limited resources that we have. We should not continue finance projects that obviously don't give results, and we should be brave to recognize this. We have to implement, I think it's really important, the novelty that should start to be implemented, and I hope to be successful, the strategic technologies for Europe platform, the so-called STEP novelty, which is 300 million euros and give opportunity to finance startups with a big amount of money. Now it's up to 15 million. It will be up to 30 million, which is also very important. But it's really key. You mentioned the private investor. How to de-risk projects and allow more private investment funding, and of course create a ground and work very closely with so-called institutional investors. Without them, we are not going to succeed this.
Mrs. Benedetta Scuderi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, designated Commissioner, for your commitment in research and development, which is essential for the European Union to address the urgent societal challenges our citizens face today, from the climate emergency to health crisis and digital transformation. As you also said, it cannot only be about growth and competitiveness, it's also about addressing the most pressing societal issues and improving the lives of our citizens. From your answers, we perceived your commitment also towards military research and investments. On this, we want to remind that military research and development has already a dedicated program called European Defence Fund, with almost 8 billion over 2021 and 2027, and which already has increased of 1.5 billion via step regulation recently. In this context, would you commit to maintain strict boundaries between civilian and military research and development activities, meaning notably not opening the next framework program to military stakeholders? Can you guarantee that in the research and innovation and development sector, military priorities will never be at the expenses of civilian research and investment priorities, in particular to climate and environmental protection emergencies?
Thank you for this question. Currently, Horizon Europe is really strictly focused on civil R&I, and yeah, it will be preserved. But having in mind the new realities, and it's not only the Russia war of aggression, I'm mentioning our competitiveness as well. We should analyze the current approach and discuss really very frankly the dual use, not military, is different. Yeah, you rightly said we have military fund, it will be separate from Horizon, it will continue to be like that. I will develop the military, the dual use. Heitor mentioned, and he was very clear to us, he, as far as remember, he said, the experts said in his report, do not make this artificial distinction, because in modern research, innovation, actually you're not sure what will be the result at the end. And actually, almost all the civil innovations can be used for do, and can give you quite a lot of examples in medicine, in drones, internet, almost every example, a lot of examples. So we will continue to evaluate. You know that the Commission released a study among the stakeholders in the member states about to the white paper. The study shows that more or less the stakeholders are split. Most research organizations and universities are in favor to preserve the status quo. Member states and of course industry, some of the member states, not all, are in favor of open the program for dual use as well. So what I can say that we are going to evaluate and to discuss with the stakeholders, with the member states, but of course with you, the next framework program. But Horizon is civilian research only, Europe.
Paolo Cuna, the floor is yours.
A large part of the knowledge of our researchers, as you talked about in your opening comments, are often leaving Europe. So what are the measures that you will take within this new European strategy for startups and scale-ups to deal with this imbalance and to improve our competitiveness, globally speaking? When we're talking about innovation clusters, where we have universities, large companies, startups, and researchers coming together with risk capital, what other actions will you take within the framework of the European Innovation Council to strengthen innovation poles in universities, which to a large extent are very important in Portugal? Furthermore, they contribute significantly to regional cohesion and regional development, and these knowledge clusters and innovation clusters need to remain competitive. How will you ensure this? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gunnar, for the question. Three challenges ahead the startups, and I hope the startup, and I work the startup strategy to address these challenges. First, administrative burden. I always will start with this administrative burden. Simplification of the framework, next framework program is also very important. I didn't have chance to touch this, but cut the text on half. I think we should start simplification by simplifying our language. A bit more focus and more precise. Second is access to funding, as I already mentioned, and I will touch other dimension, a widening country. They're underperforming the startups from widening country compared with not widening, and there is a really important, I think, project that will start from the beginning in 2025, which is called Pre-Accelerator, which will support capacity building and training in startup management from the widening member states, how to support them to have better access to the very complicated program that we have. I think what is also I didn't mention, it's because it's not in my portfolio in particular, but I'm very committed to work very close with commissioner who is in charge in this, is this support the capital market union completion, because without this we'll be not able. And to finish, yes, universities are really important. They are one of the main beneficiaries in Horizon Europe program. And I'm ready to work with alliances of universities to increase and to support the research and innovation dimension in these alliances.
Thank you. I must say that we are 22 minutes behind the schedule, so please remember all members about the time. Mr. Nikos Papas.
Καλημέρα και από μένα.
Good morning. We have observed that there are synergy difficulties between different European EU programs which have to do with red tape, practical issues with funding and financing cycles, regulations and objectives of the projects. And this constitutes an obstacle to joint research actions. So could you explain how you intend to overcome the practical difficulties within the framework of Horizon? And furthermore, with regard to countries like Greece with a lower R&I potential, what specific initiatives have you in place to support research and also in universities there? Furthermore, what specific actions will you take to enhance the inclusion of social sciences and humanities and arts in all of this for these universities in these countries? And how do you intend to ensure that these sectors will get specific support and new opportunities?
Thank you for this question. I have to be short. Horizon has dedicated program in Pillar 2, and I am it's very close to my heart to continue this, and it's really important. I'm going to discuss with the experts, as I already mentioned, because there are quite a lot of proposals in Hato report in that dimension as well, to find the best way how to govern, to improve the governance of the program. And I'm really committed to work with the widening member states. What is important is to increase the capacity of the universities and research organization. But I'll be clear, no matter what we are doing here on European level, how supportive we are, without engagement from the member states to increase their budget for research and innovation, we are not going to fill this gap between the widening member states and the rest of Europe.
Mr. Thomas Pellerin-Carlin.
Designate. The European Innovation Council was established to support innovative startups and scale-ups to deliver breakthrough innovations. But the EIC has faced several challenges in recent years, and we have competitive pressure that increase from the USA as they are implementing the Inflation Reduction Act. So Europe needs more than ever an adequate EIC to keep its competitive edge, especially on clean tech. If you were confirmed as commissioner, would you commit to deliver a honest assessment of the EIC to understand what worked and what did not work? Furthermore, how do you intend to build synergies between the EIC and the European Union research and innovation missions, especially those that relate to climate-neutral cities and climate change adaptation? Finally, to nurture a more human-centric innovation process, what do you envisage to do to guarantee that social science research is better included from the outset of the Horizon Europe funded projects, especially those that are technological in nature? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pellegrin. I remember the discussion with you, and I'm really supportive of what you said. Yes, I'm committed to be honest, to make an honest assessment of what works and what not. Already start talking with the actually discussion that I have with you before my hearing was really very useful. I already start to think and to reflect what works, what we can improve during this programming period, not to wait for the next to come, because we have 3 years of implementation of the program. Discuss with the boards, the ESC board members, and different stakeholders. So yes, I'm committed to be honest, to see what works, what not. Obviously there's quite a lot of room of improvement. Too long process, not enough flexibility of decision-making process in program managers who are really skilled experts. Not sufficient funding, 15 million, and we are discussing about scaling up. 15 million is obviously not enough. So I'm committed to be very honest, to make a real assessment of what works, what not, and to improve even in this programming period, in this framework program, what can be improved.
Mr. Philip Turek.
Thank you. Madam Commissioner Designate, your nomination is deeply troubling. We are not looking for a diplomat to manage paperwork. We need someone to lead Europe's technological future. Your quoting of the Draghi report is no substitute for first-hand expertise in innovation. The 13.8 million workers in our automotive sector deserve someone who understands technology, not someone learning it from PowerPoint slides. Your written answers are full of references to reports and frameworks, but empty of actual technology management. 2 questions arise. Firstly, how will you ensure R&D funding is based on technical feasibility rather than political ideology? Your answers focus heavily on startups and scale-ups. Secondly, how will you protect traditional industrial jobs while having no experience with their technological challenges? Madam Zaharieva, Europe's industrial future needs more than diplomatic skills. The stakes are simply too high for on-the-job learning. Thank you.
Yeah, I think actually we need both diplomatic skills, political experience, administrative capacity, and of course I will rely a lot on huge expertise that I saw in the 2 DGs. I will rely a lot, of course, on the opinion of the stakeholders. Yes, I'm not a scientist, but I have rich political experience. I have been Minister of Regional Development, Minister of Justice, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Deputy Minister of Regional Development, Director in the Ministry. Actually, I started my career from really bottom. I was expert, then Director, then Deputy Minister, then Minister, and then Deputy Prime Minister. So I believe that this quite big political experience will equip me with the necessary skills to support our companies and our business, and I'm really devoted to do so. And I will rely on expertise in this room. I see huge expertise here, and I'm very grateful with exchanging ideas with you during my preparation, now during this hearing, and hopefully in the future, if I have chance to implement my mission. So this is my answer. Thank you.
Mr. Fernand Karte is there.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mrs. Commissioner-designate, for your statements. As in other key technological and scientific sectors, Europe seems to be lagging behind in space exploration as compared to some major countries. The United States, Russia, China, Japan, and India have landed on the moon, the EU not. The European Space Agency has outlined ambitious plans through its Explore 2040 initiative. This strategy envisions sending European astronauts to the moon and ultimately to Mars. As we look to the future, it is clear that space innovation will play a transformative role in Europe's strategic autonomy, economic competitiveness, and scientific leadership. Could you please outline, Mrs. Commissioner-designate, what role the European Union and its investments in research and innovation can contribute to Europe's and European Space Agency's plans to make Moon and Mars exploration a reality, and thus highlight European innovation and expertise on a global stage? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kaitaisa, for this really important question. Yes, we have really good companies, space companies, who developed R&I in space. I already met actually the program manager for space in EIC, and we discussed a lot what we can do to support even more this huge potential that we have in European space companies and their talent and their competitiveness. Clearly, the funding is not enough. I think now we have 1.9 billion for this programming period. But I saw a lot of skilled people who understand the business very well. And we are going to present a plan to increase the money and to increase the funding of the startups in space industry. Yes, we can be competitive. We have quite a lot of knowledge in the space startup industry.
Mr. Cotrim de Figueiredo.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Zaharieva. Your mission letter puts you in the center of the role to bridge several important gaps. The innovation gap that Draghi said was the main reason why we keep falling behind the US, the R&I gap, the startup financing gap. And in all these, your work could make life easier for SMEs and startups, or just add more red tape. You could make a real impact, or just allow the EU to fall further behind. So therefore, I want to have the chance to ask you two very concrete questions about two other gaps. The bureaucracy gap. How are you going to actually help innovative companies grow? And specifically, how are you going to accelerate the 28th regime, making sure that it's not just another empty promise? Because at its present pace, it is not likely to come in force before 2030. What difficulties do you expect, and how do you want to overcome them? And the other gap is the impact assessment gap. How will you prioritize resource allocation, and how will you track the real impact of EU investments and make sure we're not just wasting taxpayers' money, something that the Renew Europe group always wants to take care of? Your clear and concrete answers to these questions are the first step to truly bridging these gaps.
Thank you, Mr. De Figueiredo. Yes, we have this gap. I'm not sure about bureaucracy. Is it gap or it's something different? But as I already mentioned, I'll be really much focused on propose this together. It's not, I'm not leading in this, but I'm very devoted to work very closely with the Commissioner for Justice to propose this 28 regime. You're right, it will be not easy. Maybe we will start with enhanced cooperation, because I'm not sure that we are going to have all the member states on board from the beginning, but I will rely a lot on your support also to work with the member states to convince them to accept this regime. So we are going to propose the legislative proposal and work with the member states to convince them, but if not, we don't have all on board, we can at least start with enhanced cooperation, not to wait, as you said, until 2030. Implementation, yes, as our president outlined in her speech, our legislation is as better as its implementation. So if we don't implement our legislation good, we didn't create a good legislation. For the program itself, I saw the data, and my assessment is that it's a huge bureaucratic burden. Still, we don't have final data about the evaluation of the program, but the preliminary assessment shows between 12 and 20% of administrative costs for our beneficiaries, which is huge. Obviously, the program is too complicated, and we have simplified drastically.
Thank you. Mrs. Hildegard Bentel.
Looking at public-private partnerships when it comes to research programs, the objective here is to increase research investment in industry. But we have to conclude that despite the incentives and possibility of research framework programs and investments, these investments have not actually increased, and Europe is unable to meet its research investment goal. When it comes to the future implementation of the framework program, we don't just need more public-private partnerships, but in fact, we need to change the investment relationship within European companies and to make sure they are future-proof with more competitiveness. How will you ensure this?
Danke sehr, Frau Benteley. I agree with you. I think that what we should do is that the two pillars, the two instruments that we have in the framework program, like EIC and Pillar 2, must attract more private investment. We don't interact. The data are not bad. It's 36% as far remember from the Pillar 2. Commitments are coming from industry, and EIC fund attract for every euro invest for additional private funding, but obviously it's not enough. The data, for example, we spoke about GDP, 2.3% of GDP in average in Europe, compared with 3.6 of GDP. But the difference came from the private sector. European private sector investment in R&I is 1.3%. USA private sector investment in R&I is 2.4%. We should really motivate the private sector through different incentives on a European level to use our funds better. The Trusted Investor Network that was launched actually at the end of last month by Ilana Ivanova, and I'm grateful to her for this initiative, and I'm ready to develop it. It's also a very valuable tool. It's a first step. We raised the expectation of the private sector, and now we have to deliver. How to deliver? To work close with them, and also to implement what we promise for less red tape and simplification.
Thank you. Mrs. Sophie Eriksson.
I'll be speaking in Swedish. Forskare ska ägna sig åt forskning, men när man pratar med forskare själva så
When it comes to investigation, research and investigation, when we talk to researchers, they are more involved with red tape and less involved in research. Public funds are spread very thin, and researchers have to really fight to have their piece of the pie to carry out their research. And all public administrations have different requirements, and this does not help creating a unified research environment. So there are very different points of view when it comes to this, and the commissioner designate has said that you wish to receive, or rather improve the competitiveness of Europe. But how do we ensure that researchers can focus on research? So my direct question is, what will you do to ensure that researchers can focus on research, and how exactly do you see the relationship between this and Horizon Europe? Thank you.
One of the, I'll be very direct, one of the possibilities is this two-phase application. Because if it's two-phase application, that means that researchers, so the companies, the startups who apply, they will be, the first part will be focused on present the project, as you said, just to describe the project, the research project or the innovation project. Not work between 35 and plus 15 more days if they have complicated collaborative projects. So just to fill all the documents and papers that we ask from them. So I think this is very concrete. Also, what is very important, I didn't mention the lump sums, but I'm very supportive of the lump sums. And the results and the initial assessment shows that it's also the researchers and innovators are very supportive as well. Big research organizations, universities, not that much, but individual researchers and innovators are very much supportive. That give them a possibility to focus exactly on what you said, on research and innovation, not on reporting. So those are very concrete initiatives that I'm going to develop, if I'm approved, of course.
Mr. Yuri Ratas.
Thank you, dear Madam Ekaterina Zaharieva. Thank you for your remarks and answers that clarified a lot. My question to you is a follow-up to the written answers you have provided us. As you know, Parliament is requesting the Union legislation of the freedom of scientific research that should be applicable across the Union, including on Union institutions. In your written answers, you write that you will include the freedom of scientific research in your proposal for the ERA Act. Can you confirm that your proposal will indeed be in the line with the Parliament's resolution and will therefore propose legislation that is applicable across the Union and will offer a basis for courts to protect the freedom of scientific research? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Ratas, I commit to propose the legislative proposal, and I'm very grateful to the Parliament for the resolution that was issued and adopted in 2024. As you know, together with the Parliament, the DG implemented a study on this resolution to prepare the legislative proposal. And I'm ready to work with you, to discuss with you, and I'm very supportive because unfortunately the trend is for our academic freedom index and freedom of research, scientific research is we have worrying trends in Europe since 2008, and this is a very worrying trend, as I mentioned. And we should work with the member states, with the researchers to address their worries. Because if they are not free to research what they want, we are not going to have this excellent research. And I think we have really good example in ERC to implement for that, this bottom-up approach. I mean, ERC is a good example. But yes, I'm ready to commit, and I'm committed to the legislation, legislative proposal.
Mr. Rafael Stancanelli.
Sì, grazie Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Commission Designate. According to a July report on participation of SMEs in Horizon Europe, 20% of financing has currently been assigned with an increase in comparison to Horizon 2020. However, financing was only about 0.3 percentage points higher. Do you plan to review allocation of resources for SMEs in the next programme? That's my first question. Then, do you intend to maintain the definitions of micro, small and medium enterprises as we have in 361 from 2003 and keeping them in the same categories? How do you see new SME controls and competitiveness for the recommendations made by Ursula von der Leyen in her letter to the Commission? And finally, the architecture of a new fund for competitiveness. The report sets out funds for research, and these are going to be impacted by that. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I'm sure that I have all the questions that you to ask me, but I will start with SMEs. Yes, it's not enough. It's only 20%. SMEs represent 99% of the European companies. And definitely something is wrong when only 20% of the Horizon Europe funding goes to the SMEs, if they represent 99% of the companies in Europe. The reason, I think it's a too complicated program, and we should work to simplify it, and that's why all the measures that I have a chance to present to you today by answering the questions will be linked to increase of participation of the SMEs. It maybe sounds like cliché, but it's true. Without simplifying our rules, our programs, we are not going to increase the participation of the SMEs in all the programs in Europe. They think that it's too complicated, takes a lot of resources to prepare the applications. Some of them don't have these resources, and that's why their participation it's low.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno Gonçalves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be speaking in Portuguese. Cara Comissária.
Dear Commissioner Designate Zaharieva, Bulgaria and Portugal are on different sides of Europe, but we face common issues. One of the main issues is young people leaving our countries. We are the best qualified, but they are not the best paid. As a result, there is this brain drain, and this has an impact on the demography and regional cohesion of different member states. Now, research and innovation are very important in changing this trend. So, firstly, how exactly will the European research area ensure that our universities actually have a real economic impact? How exactly will you ensure that researchers remain in their countries? And how will you ensure that competitivity clusters can be an example for Europe to follow? Furthermore, how exactly will you strengthen the Europe research funds so that these opportunities are available to all, especially to the youth? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonçalves. As you said, and a couple of you said, in order to increase the youth productivity, we have to become better to translate our excellent research into innovation and competitive products. And I remember your discussion with you as well, and this will be also very important and will lead to the young people from Portugal, Bulgaria, but in general in Europe, and the young researchers and innovators to remain in Europe. And ERA Act, you mentioned ERA Act as well. It will be hopefully proposed in 2026 years latest. The goal is to develop a true EU-wide ecosystem of research, innovation, and growth. To create these minimum standards for researchers and innovators, to support, to remain the talents in Europe, but also to support their collaboration research and their training and researching in different so-called free movement of research, innovation, and knowledge. And I think this is the way forward to create a better environment for our young researchers, to improve the research and innovation in infrastructure as well. It's really important because it's matter for their work. And better coordinate the strategies among the member states. This will be the key aspects in the ERA Act, and it's also linked with retaining talents in Europe.
Mrs. Sabine Verheyen.
Commissioner designated, freedom of research and freedom of academia are strongly interconnected. Given your commitment to strengthening the European education area and the European research area as frameworks for seamless mobility and transnational cooperation, how would you concretely address the need for a timely implementation of comprehensive recognition of educational degrees within the EU, which is also a main target in the Erasmus Plus program? Such recognition is essential for fostering greater student, researcher and worker mobility, especially in light of global talent competition and skills shortages in key sectors. How would you ensure more robust EU-wide standards for degree equivalency to facilitate free movement of talent, and how might this align with current European initiatives like the European Universities Alliance, the European Degree and sector-specific academics in equipping Europeans with further oriented skills? And how will you cooperate with the commissioners responsible in the field of education?
Thank you, Madam Verheyen. Indeed, this is a really important question. I already met with my colleague, and we discussed actually in advance how we work together. You mentioned University Alliances, Maria Skłodowska-Curie Actions, ERA, European Research Area, which is very, very linked with European Education Area and European Higher Education Area. So I can commit that we are going to have a really good cooperation and work in the same direction. You mentioned now on your point how we will do this to advance on the implementation of the blueprint for European degree. We have to work with the member states to convince them to implement this. And European Alliance, University Alliance is actually a really good instrument that we have for increasing the trust, because without increasing the trust among the member states and universities, we will be not able to reach the goal that all young people actually dream for it. And we work for a new years for this. So only trust can lead to recognition of qualifications and diploma.
Thank you. Mr. Damian Besselager.
Dear Commissioner Designate, some of us fear that the EU's competitiveness agenda will once be state aid for dinosaurs, and your job would be to focus it instead on new industries, such as green tech. But for that, as you said, we need access to capital and to talent. On talent, will you make it easier for startups to hire across EU borders to become more attractive for digital nomads? Will you expand labor migration channels, for example, the startup visa and youth mobility schemes? And on capital, what will you do exactly to enable institutional investors to invest in VCs? Do you commit to a mandatory 10%, for example, startup quota in public procurement in combination with compensation for bidding? And on simplification, without undermining our policy goals, do you want to, or how do you want to foster the digitization of the administration and of reporting, specifically one-stop shops for startups? And how will you apply the think small first principle and de minimis clauses in regulation? Thank you.
Thank you. Quite a lot of questions. I'm not able to address all of them in 2 minutes. I will start from the simplification. You know that I'm really committed, and one-stop shop actually is what we try to do in EIC. I'm not sure that sorry, I missed. Okay. I'm not sure that we succeed, but actually this is the goal to the 3 stages. In EIC, the 3 pillars that we have there. So yes, this is for Horizon. I'm not able to commit with the 10% of all procurement, innovative procurement, to be preserved for startups. First, because we don't have yet a legal definition of a startup. So step by step, we should first create a legal definition for startups. And what is more important, actually, to improve the legislation, to amend our legislation to boost this innovative public procurement, because in Europe we have only 0.05% of the for public procurement from the grants, actually. Of all public procurement that we have in Europe, only 0.05% are linked with innovations. So obviously, we didn't create something the ground in legislation for innovative public procurement. So we work with other commissioners to, as is mentioned in the political guidance of President von der Leyen, for amendments of the directives linked with public procurement.
Mrs. Maria Teresa Vivaldini.
Gentilissima commissaria designata.
Dear Commissioner Designate, I just want to share some reflections with you on research in agriculture. This is key to allow the sector to become more sustainable, to promote practices that will reduce the environmental impact, improve soil health, and preservation of biodiversity. We know that discussions on new technology discussions are blocked. And these are going to be key to face up to the challenge of climate change, which is bringing agriculture to its knees. So I want to ask your position on this and ask whether European farmers will be able to use this to ensure that we have a level playing field with other farmers around the world. Also, European farmers are facing up to phytopathologies and animal diseases that are endangering their income. In my region, in Italy, we are seeing African swine flu and avian flu. What can you do to make vaccines available as quickly as possible? And will we be able to produce them in sufficient quantities to ensure that we can distribute them at a affordable cost?
Madam Vivaldini, I really understand your questions, because actually in Bulgaria we face the same, our agricultural sector face the same challenges with the African swine fever. So I really know how difficult it is for the country, for the farmers, how big loss is for agricultural sector, and it's a big tragedy, I would say, because it's their work, their life. So yes, definitely, I will support to step up research for such diseases, and the problem must be urgently addressed. And we have the instruments, we have the tools, and I'm very, very supportive on this, and you can rely on me in this endeavor. On your first part of the question, I'm not sure that I managed to understand everything. What I know is that there was proposal from the Commission, but it's blocking the Council. So my portfolio, I mean the portfolio of research and innovation, and it's political sensitive issue. I think the role of research and innovation should be to explain the people, help the politicians to take decisions, but it's a controversial topic, and it depends on the council to take decision now.
Thank you. Mrs. Martinez.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I will speak in Spanish. Brevemente, ¿cómo?
Very briefly, how does the Commission plan to ensure transparency and governance for research and innovation projects using disruptive technologies to ensure that you can keep a check on double use and any possible abuses of these technologies? How is the Commission going to ensure conditions in all countries and regions to ensure that disruptive technologies focused on the markers will respect ethical practices and proper practices, and also to ensure that all types of research and development across Europe, including those in regions that are more developed in terms of human rights and good practices, will not be penalized when competing with regions without the same standards?
Horizon Europe program is focused on civilian research and innovation, and all the projects have to implement the high ethical standards, so there is no exception on this principle. On dual use, we have evaluate, we have reflect, and the new realities that I already mentioned, and is not only Russia war of aggression towards Ukraine, is also our competitiveness. And it's also what the scientists think that this artificial division. But we are going to continue this evaluation, maybe to start and to propose a new study, because the first study actually was not representative enough. There were quite a few participants in this study. This was taught from the DG, and of course speak with the member states, speak with you in the parliament, and with the experts, as I already mentioned, with the industry, with the universities and research organizations, and find the right balance. So how we can guarantee, I think, depends on the researchers and innovators, because first the program is focused on civil, but second, when the research and innovators, they have their patents, depends on them for what purposes their research or innovation will be used. So they have these intellectual rights, it depends on them. So this is the guarantee. It will depend on the researchers and innovators.
Thank you. Signor Fulvio Martuscello.
Commissario, ho letto le sue risposte.
I read your written responses and I found them very complete. In some of the written responses, you refer to wanting to contribute to building a European area of research and innovation, and that there are going to be significant initiatives taken in the next 5 years to try to overcome too low investment in R&I and to ensure that it's higher than 3% of GDP. And also to coordinate member states' research and invest and development systems. And you say that this is the cause of significant differences in development between countries and regions. What specific measures do you think are necessary in order to bridge this gap in terms of innovation and to ensure participation of member states, particularly those who are further behind with the framework programme? Thank you.
Thank you, Signora Martuscello, for your question. Three key elements. First, investments, European semester, I'm going to repeat it, work with the member states, use European Area Act to recommit with minimum 3% of GDP. Second is better coordination. With the limited resources that we have, and the resources even reach 3%, it's still not sufficient enough. We should be better coordinated. in the member states, between the region, but between the European Union funds, in the European Union funds themselves, in the program, I see overlaps even in Horizon Europe program, lack of synergy sometimes in the different programs in Horizon Europe itself, like EIT, EIC, there I see some overlaps there. So use our resources better, focus better, coordinate better, don't overlap. And on widening, again, it's a very dear to my heart question. As I already mentioned, we are better than FP7 and Horizon 2020, but still a lot have to be achieved. We have a good part of widening that works well, but for example, HAPAN still not developed. I hear some of your complaints about this. Still some of the member states are not using enough these possibilities. So obviously we should improve our work in Commission, like work with those who are not performing well enough. That means maybe the problem is also in how we structure the program, what we can improve in the program itself. So I'll be very, very much focused on the widening measures, but not only on the measure itself, but how to improve the participation of widening member states in whole Horizon parts. It's not only widening.
Thank you. And Mr. Oliveira.
Ms. Zaharieva, now the policies that you're defending have a number of issues. Firstly, they accentuate the imbalances between countries when it comes to technological development and also to keeping researchers and scientists in the country. You have access to Euro funds by a limited number of beneficiaries. You're continuing to look at science and research with its possibility to generate profits for large companies and not necessarily responding to social issues. So my question is the following. There are three possible alternatives. Firstly, prioritize support policies for countries that are scientifically and technologically lagging behind. Secondly, creating support policies for public networks for science and research, where we look at national development and responding to social issues as a priority. Thirdly, supporting national policies to help academics and researchers by improving their employment and academic futures and to keeping scientific development in the countries.
Mr. Oliveira, I'm ready to support all of your proposals, and I'm committed to work with you on these ideas. I don't know what else to add. I'm really supportive of what you said. So the time is running, and I try to keep. I think we are quite above the time, Mr. Chair. So, except saying, you can count on my support on this.
Thank you. We have just finished the second round, so let me give the floor to the Vice Chair of the Committee on Culture and Education, Mr. Bogdan Zdrojewski. I'm pleased to welcome the member of invited committee, and the floor is yours.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask a question concerning the activities about the synergies between the European education area, European research area. So how do you want to cooperate with Vice President Zato in areas concerning the European University Alliance? But I'm also very much interested in your assessment of the Bologna system. It's been functioning now for quite a lot of years, and it had two tasks. One was to catch up for the European universities with the American universities. We have not succeeded in this, so maybe we should start works on a new system, new program, and new perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zdrojewski. Linking education, higher education, and the European research area, it's really key for the European Research Innovation Union to be created. As you know, it's one of my primary goal, and for our competitiveness. Without good education, we are not going to have good higher education. Without good higher education, we are not going to have a quality research and innovation. I work close with Roxana Minzato. I met her. We discussed quite intensively our ideas, mainly about university alliances, because this is the part that, we are going to work in close synergy with her. For European University Alliances, it was a big success. It was created quite fast. We have now 500 universities in a really good network. But we should also work to create the sustainability in the finance. Now we have financing through Erasmus+, but what I think we should work in elaborate and cooperate with you and with the respective DGs, but also with the alliances itself, and is to create this sustainability in their financing. My goal will be really to improve this research and innovation dimension. I don't want to predetermine the negotiations for the next framework program, but I will be very much focused on to have strengthened this focus in university alliances, but on preserving the excellence as main principle and this competitive principle that we have in Horizon Europe.
Thank you, and let's start immediately the final round, and I give the floor to Mr. Dario Tamburrano from the left.
Buongiorno, Commissario.
Good morning, Commissioner-designate Zaharieva. 3D printing has reached quite high levels of technological development in terms of the types of materials that can be used, the range, and the resilience of the supply when it comes to extra-European supplies. So this represents a number of advantages compared to the usual types of production. It's flexible, it's rapid to get products to market, and is accessible for SMEs and startups. However, today, there are still problems in Europe in certifying products that have been made this way because of the EU legislation that's currently in force. For example, when it comes to toys or medical devices or exchange parts for the circular economy. At the same time, a lot of input materials are not covered by any labeling certifications or covered by requirements. As a Commissioner for Startups and Innovation, how, together with the rest of the team of commissioners, tend to tackle this to ensure that legislation is updated, to ensure that this Industry 4.0 can take advantage of this type of technology and develop on EU territory, at the same time meeting the necessary consumer protection and health requirements when it comes to labelling for products from these types of inputs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tamburrano. We already have the chance to discuss this very dear to your heart issue with standardization. What I know at that stage is I understand that the current legislative framework of EU standardization is being evaluated. So obviously that the Commission heard the worries of coming from the sector and start this evaluation. I also, specifically on medical devices, Also, a targeted evaluation of the legislative framework for medical devices is currently ongoing. And I will work with the commissioner in charge, like the Executive Vice President Séjourné, on these issues, because if the sector has worries, that means that something is wrong in our legislation. And on my perspective, I will make sure that the life sciences strategy and the biotechnology strategy will support regulatory science that can facilitate approval of safe new technology. That means that also in life science strategy, regulatory complexes will be addressed as well.
Mrs. Alexandra Gesse.
Thank you very much, Chair. Commissioner Designate, considering President von der Leyen's 100 billion commitment to a European AI initiative akin to CERN, how will you work with the Vice President for Tech Sovereignty to ensure that the European AI ecosystem meets the competitiveness challenges highlighted in the Draghi agenda? And what will you do in the European Innovation Act to ensure that the European Innovation Council prioritizes substantial investments to support high-potential European AI startups and helps to build open, sovereign, and sustainable digital infrastructures? How do you envision the EIC's role in fostering a competitive, autonomous AI ecosystem that strengthens European tech sovereignty and reduces dependency on non-European technologies? And last but not least, how will you ensure that sustainability is a crucial factor for AI? We know that current large language models are not compatible with our climate goals because of their huge energy consumption. Data centers will compete for energy with our industry and thus further jeopardizing competitiveness. At the same time, Europe is already excellent when it comes to developing much more sustainable computing capabilities. So what will you do to strengthen sustainable digital technologies made in Europe? Not a question, but a comment. I very much welcome your commitment to gender equality. Gender equality in science and research is not only good for women, but for all of us, because there's ample evidence that it improves the quality of our science and research and also the competitiveness of our businesses. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Madam Giza. It's really a topic that is very dear to my heart. And now on AI, I will work closely with Executive Vice President Virkkunen on artificial intelligence, and I'm committed to consult the scientific community to develop a joint roadmap and to procure a study exploiting implementation options. We need four actually, very important ingredients for developing of AI. It's, of course, funding, computer power, data, and skills. Without the four of them, we will be not able to advance with the strategy that we want to implement in front of you. And none of the member states is able to have the whole four alone. So this council, because a lot of you have asked me what exactly this council is going to do, the goal of this council should be to pool our resources effectively. All these four ingredients that I already mentioned. So I work very closely with Henna Virkkunen and with the scientific community to present the strategy and the launch of the AI Research Council in Science.
Mr. Hristo Petrov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll speak in Bulgarian. Уважаема госпожо Захариева.
Dear Mrs. Zaharieva, in the context of the initiative, the New European Bauhaus, my question is the following. What opportunities do you see for the use of digital tools within the Horizon Europe program to preserve culture and access to culture? And do you foresee any special support for smaller or more remote cultural institutions within the context of the digital transition?
Благодаря, господин Петров, за въпроса.
Thank you, Mr. Petrov, for this question. I think it's a very important issue. Inclusivity, and when it comes to education and culture, is very important. We've talked about this. I touched upon this in my introductory remarks. I said that I do believe we should be inclusive if we want to create conditions, favorable conditions in all of our member states. But I also think we have to put a focus on regions, like you said. So yes, my portfolio is not directly related to culture and education. However, the Horizon program provides funding for research and innovation in the social sciences as well, and that covers culture. We mentioned many measures concerning the so-called widening countries that are not yet quite there when it comes to research and innovation. And all of these measures are valid for culture and research within the field of culture as well. So yes, you have my support. You can count on my support. With regard to inclusivity, I'm very much ready to work with you towards achieving progress in that regard. However, to do that, we have to have the member states on our side as well. Because whatever we do at a European level, it will be ineffective without the support and the funding at a national level on behalf of the member states. Whatever we do here, unless we have more national funding for culture, education, research and innovation, we will not do without this if we want to make Europe a more competitive place in a global context.
Ik spreek Nederlands. Mevrouw Zaharieva, voor de...
Thank you for your answers, but I have a very specific question. In the hunt for decarbonisation and sustainable sources of energy, then nuclear energy is going to play a key role. The joint European Torres, the largest project in Europe, has shown its worth in and the fact that it is essential in projects. But this infrastructure it threatens being lost. Soon, within a couple of weeks, this specific project might be dismantled, and this is for decades has been leading our European knowledge and expertise. So I think that we are making a big mistake. In your mission letter, you refer to the long-term strategy for and strengthening European research infrastructure. So my specific question is as follows. What specific actions will you take to maintain JET so that knowledge that we have built up will not be lost, so that our students and researchers can further work on this and build on this, and to ensure that we can maintain Europe in the face of China, amongst others? Thank you.
For this question on JET, what we'll do, if of course approved, it's to connect and discuss with the United Kingdom to manage to convince them not to stop financing the JET project. Because after the Brexit, you know, it was part of the negotiation and agreement that we reached. The joint European Torus, that is the full name of JET facilities, was transferred, the ownership was transferred to the United Kingdom, and they decided to stop the financing. They also, after the Brexit negotiations that we have now ongoing, was decided also not to cooperate with the EU through the Euratom research and training program, which was one of the possibilities to continue financing the JET facilities. So on that stage, what we can do, and I can commit, is to, if I'm approved, and to talk with the United Kingdom colleagues to convince them to continue financing, because European Commission don't have neither legal base and even with the finances and resources that we have to continue finance this project without having United Kingdom on board. This is what I can commit for JET project in particular.
Thank you. And Mr. Andras Gyurk.
Thank you. Madam Commissioner Designate, in the past almost 3 hours, you've been stressing the importance of speeding up access to research funds, as well as the improvement of accessibility of the European research cooperation. I agree with you. And this is exactly why I would like to draw your attention to the fact that since December 22, based on the Commission's proposal, 21 Hungarian universities have been excluded from the funding of the Horizon Europe Framework Programme. As a result of this discriminatory measure, for instance, projects of Hungarian medical universities aimed at developing rehabilitation treatments have been excluded. This step also made impossible the formation of an international cooperation programme on a European disease forecasting system led by Nobel Prize winner Professor Ferenc Krauss. It is clear that this policy causes direct damage to the lives of citizens. With this in mind, if you take office, when exactly do you plan to respond to the Hungarian government's legislative proposal submitted a year ago? When will you abolish this unprecedented and discriminatory situation? Thank you very much.
I will start by saying that our collective interest is to welcome back these Hungarian universities and companies that the measures were taken to them. It's also important to mention that they can participate in Horizon Europe actions, but without receiving EU funds. So I'm aware that Hungarian government has created a guarantee fund, and they can use this guarantee fund to participation, to continue their participation in Horizon Europe. So I think it's important to ensure a clear understanding for the RNI community that these entities can participate, as I told you. I'm not sure that all of them are no. So, of course, the measures, as you mentioned, can be lifted only at any point, in any time, when further notification by Hungarian government is proposed to the Commission of new remedial measures. So I'm committed to work with the Hungarian government, to look at the measures, and to see where more need to be done to lead these measures.
Mr. Matthias Ecke.
Madam Commissioner Designate, I would like to skip the question that I actually intended on high-tech research, and because I would like to draw my attention and your attention to a question that I think you have failed to answer twice in this hearing. It is about RNI missions, because missions provide societal guidance over many components of Horizon Europe. And I think of missions like the climate neutral cities, beating cancer, or adaptation to climate change. So I think they're very important also in the framework of research policy. So what is your assessment of the missions, and how do you want to continue them, invest more on them, and which role are they supposed to play in your future research policy? I would really like you to get back on that, because you did not in the previous answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry that I didn't. I tried to stack in 2 minutes, always went more. Missions, yes, you said, I agree with you, they're important. There are 5 missions, as you already know very well, and they're delivering, but the evaluation that I read, and it's that we should do better. First, we should improve the governance of the missions and ownerships, because obviously there is not enough engagement from some of the DGs. So there are different ideas that I'm going to discuss with other commissioners to increase the ownership and political ownership, so to say, in the highest level of the missions. Maybe by some ideas to some of the commissioners to become something like patron, so to increase the ownership, the political ownership of the missions. Second is, unfortunately, the missions fail to pool private investments or resources, not only private investments, but also other funds, funding from the member states, for example, like through the cohesion fund, which was the initial idea, not only funding from Horizon Europe program, which is dedicated, as you know, on research. So we should do more, better, to pool these resources from other European instruments, but also national, regional funds and private investments. And the third is what we should improve is also to citizens' engagement, which is not sufficient at that stage. Maybe because of lack of information. And these are my three goals for the missions, to work on these three in these three dimensions.
Mr. Virgil Daniel Popescu.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Commissioner Designated, I want to ask you some questions about the Strategic Energy Technology Plan. So what specific measure will you implement to ensure a balanced energy mix that includes advanced technology like Generation 4 nuclear reactors, small modular reactor, alongside renewable sources such as offshore wind, solar and hydrogen, to enhance energy resilience with meeting EU safety and sustainability standards? Additionally, how will you ensure that the SET plan's research, innovation and deployment priorities are effectively integrated and funded within the upcoming framework programs? In particular, how will you support early-stage research, foster collaboration between member states and establish robust accountability mechanisms? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I fully support research to achieve balanced energy mix and intend to support the set plan through our funding instruments. Cluster 5 of Pillar 2 is dedicated to and very focused on the energy projects. I'm in favor of constructing, continuing to support research in SMRs, as I already managed to answer in my previous questions. I have the data here, and EIC, European Innovation Council, it's obviously quite a lot of, they have financed 250 projects until now, and 113 of them, almost half, almost 50%, were linked with energy technology. This is about 338 million euros, which is quite a lot, having in mind that ERC don't have sufficient funding. So I'm in favor. I think the SET plan is really good instrument that can pull resources from private sector, support us to reach this 3% GDP, which we will discuss so many times this time. How to make SET plan more impactful for the future, simplify the governance structure, more focus and concrete target to support the youth competitiveness, convert the good SET plans, implementation plan into European strategic R&I agendas. I mean, it's really important to make this synergy. So my time is running. I'm very much supportive in research and innovation to achieve this balanced energy mix.
Thank you. We have finished the final round, so this is the time for concluding remarks. So the floor is yours. It is 5 minutes, but it is not necessary to use all the time, of course.
Yes, this is my plan. Thank you, Chair. I would start by, of course, thanking the European Parliament and in particular the members of ITRE and CUL committee for this, my opinion, very useful and fruitful discussion that we had today. And of course, the Parliament and new chairs on the very fair way the hearing was conducted. I pay tribute to immense expertise on this committee. It was very visible today during your questions. You are really masters of your portfolios. You are very well aware of the problems, but also what we have to improve by working together for the next framework program or for existing one. It's a very moving moment for me to stand here today because I was a teenager when the Berlin Wall fell, and I have memories. I was 14 years. And it opens a brand new world for me, like essential freedoms that we missed before the fall of the Berlin Wall. So it's really a moving moment for me to stay in front of you today, with you today, to ask for your support, to be able to implement my vision, which I hope was able to present today in front of you. So I don't want to repeat. My team has prepared to me 5-minute speech to repeat again all the priorities, but I'm not going to do that. I just want to repeat what I already stated in my introduction, that I'm really committed to work closely with all of you, honorable members of the Parliament, to discuss with you on all stages our proposals and important initiatives for my portfolio, discuss with you the next framework program, and to meet on a regular basis when I asked to meet you. But not only, my door will be always open for the members of the European Parliament. So with that, I want to conclude my closing remarks. Once again, sincere thank you for this very positive exchange of opinions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all members who took part in this hearing for your questions, as well as Commissioner-designate Mrs. Zaharieva for all your replies. And of course, you will be always warmly welcome at our committee. So the evaluation meeting will be held in camera today at 1 p.m. Remember, and I'd like to announce that this meeting is now closed. Thank you very much.